Moving over to the Great White Way, let us talk about Life of Pi. And this is a play that takes place in India and Mexico, but mostly in the ocean. A young man whose family is leaving their home and they get shipwrecked, and suddenly he finds himself on a raft or a rowboat with a Bengal tiger as his companion. This is a play that makes a very generous use of puppetry, certainly not on the level of Lion King, but nicely done nonetheless. The tiger is a puppet. The tiger's name is Richard Parker. This is really a tour de force performance, and I am going to attempt to pronounce this name properly. This is Hiran Abe Sikra, and he's got to carry the show with a puppet tiger for a companion, and he just really does an amazing job. I mean, it's not a short show, and he's on stage for pretty much all of it, and he's just got to plow through with it as his character Pi, who is stranded for weeks, months at a time, trying to survive in the sea. And it's fascinating, and it's entertaining, and it's nerve-wracking at times.
One thing you didn't mention,
yes,
that he's not as uncomfortable with animals as most people would be, even the Bengal tiger, because his family had a zoo. They ran a zoo. They tried to take some of the animals with them. That's how Richard Parker wound up on the ship that got shipwrecked. That's how Richard Parker wound up in the ocean with Pi. Because he was in a box, being shipped from wherever they were to, well, they were in India, going to wherever they were going. He wasn't the only animal. As long as the tiger had some kind of food, he didn't attack Pi. As long as Richard Parker had some kind of food, and they did have a little bit of food to start with. They had some sort of crackers, and but those went pretty quickly.
Right, and he had to learn to survive in the sea, which he does often by channeling the voices of the people he knew. For example, his father, nicely played by Rashish Bose, both when he's there and when Pi is channeling him, who tells him this is how you deal with the tiger. So, and by calling upon the people in his life, he ends up surviving with the tiger. Also, he has a human shipmate at one point, Brian Thomas Abraham, who plays the ship's cook and washes up and teaches him a thing or two. His actor also plays the voice of Richard Parker, who at some point begins talking to Pi. And it really is creative, cleverly done, and I had a really enjoyable evening watching him.
The tiger actually talks to Pi, or is that the sun gets to him and he's hallucinating?
Well, there is a question the play starts with him in a hospital, so we know he gets rescued, and the people treating him are wondering, did this really happen? So that's a question that hangs over. Did the whole thing actually happen, or was this something that he concocted? So my feeling is I don't think the tiger actually talked to him. But, a lot can happen when you're at sea. And he may believe it, and I'm willing to go with that. Or there may be the possibility that something totally different that didn't involve a tiger happened. And that's...
Well, I was truly fascinated by the puppetry of all of the creatures, but specifically of Richard Parker, because he was so large. I mean, we've seen elephants and other large things.
We've seen King Kong on stage.
And we've seen King Kong on stage. Absolutely right. But for this particular kind of thing, where there's a finite amount of space that two creatures, a human being and a creature, have to share the space, and he has to be able to sort of cuddle into himself so that he can fit. I think there was just so much intricate, small work. Big work might be easier, than that small work of getting those things to happen. And we also had war horse. But I mean, we now, the drama desk now has a special puppetry prize. I don't know whether the Tonys do or not, but once upon a time, puppetry was an off-Broadway thing. It wasn't an on-Broadway thing, and I think that's an amazing, I think being able to tell the life of pi, there would not be really any other way. So maybe a man in a tiger suit, maybe, but I don't think so.
The consequence of all this is that the bar has been raised, so that while this was excellently done puppetry, it's not breaking any new ground, it's not some new innovative, it's not going to give you the feeling like when you saw The Lion King, 20 years ago.
About all of those animals in The Lion King.
Yeah. Or I don't even think it's quite up to the level of War Horse, but it is done very well, and you do have a very potent and very gripping evening with this play.
Do you think it's too frightening for little children?
How little? I wouldn't bring a 5-year.
Don't bring anybody under 12, I think.
Frightening things do happen, but it is not graphic, and I will say it depends on your child.
So, what would you give this?
I would give this 4 playbills.
That's, for you, that's a lot. These last few days, these last few times you've been doing this, you haven't been so generous with your 4s. I would say the whole ethos of the play, it really got the flavor of India in the beginning. It really got the flavor of the docks and the ship with very little. I mean, with just a little bit of visual and a lot of noise, audio. I hope this play is up for an audio award because it deserves one. But I would give it a 4.5. I didn't care for it that much. I had not read the book. There were people sitting in the audience saying, oh yes, that was in the book. I never read the book, but I did see the movie. And the movie was scary as hell because it was the real time.
Okay. So you're giving it 4.5 out of 5 playbills, but you're not recommending it?
I didn't have to like it to be able to recommend it. I don't have to like a play to be able to recommend it. It has much to be recommended for. Many things that are not my favorite thing.
Okay. Fair enough.
I don't know how else to justify it except that way, but that's
okay.
That's what I would.